Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We will be getting started soon. Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Feel free to put where you're joining from today in the chat. Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We are ready to begin. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 contact hour. Sigma Theta Tau International Honor Society of Nursing is accredited as a provider of nursing continuing professional development by the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Commission on Accreditation. The nurse planners, content experts, faculty, and others in control of the content today have no relevant financial relationships with ineligible companies. To receive contact hours for this NCPD session, participants are required to attend the webinar and log into our learning management system to complete an evaluation form. Information on how to access this will be emailed to all attendees 1 week after the webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be available via the Sigma repository within a few business days of recording. Following the presentation, if we have time, we will have a question and answer session. You'll see on your Zoom webinar control panel that you can send a message through the Q&A feature. This is where you can type in any question you'd like to pose to the presenters. Be sure to hit send so that the message makes it to us. Please use the Q&A for questions and the chat feature to interact with other participants. We would like to thank our speakers for sharing their expertise with us today. Our presenters today are two Sigma staff members, Dr. Linda Anders and Riley Kimsey. Dr. Linda Anders is a board-certified nurse in nursing professional development, currently employed with Sigma as the Nursing Education Programming Manager. Linda has been recognized as a leader among her peers as she has received 40 Under 40 Emerging Nurse Leader Award in Illinois and 100 Great Nurses Award in the state of Iowa. Linda is active in her local community through volunteering and recently graduated from Sinclair School of Nursing at the University of Missouri with her Doctor of Nursing Practice degree and a graduate certificate in Global Public Health. Riley Kimsey received her MFA from Seattle University and has almost 20 years of experience working with nonprofit organizations. Her work experience has allowed her to see both sides of the grant cycle experience and understands the impact grants have on providing crucial funding to further one's research. We would like to welcome our presenters, and I will turn it over to them to begin the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We are so thankful that we have such a global presence on the webinar. I'm seeing a lot of interaction in the chat, which is wonderful. And thank you, Megan, for those lovely introductions. We do encourage you to use the chat feature, like Megan said, so please continue to chat amongst yourself throughout this webinar, and then use the Q&A feature if you have any questions for me or Riley once we get into the content. We will save all of those questions to the end of the webinar and we'll answer them at that time. As Megan stated, this webinar is being recorded. So if you want to review this information after the fact, you will be able to do so on the Sigma repository in our learning management system or on Nursing Centered on our website. So lots of ways for you to review this content after the fact. So we are so thankful that you are joining us today to learn about what abstracts and grant reviewers are, what that looks like in the scope of what Sigma expects. And this is actually the first webinar that we are hosting this year in regards to reviewers. We will also host another webinar in June 2024. The date has not been secured yet, but we will do a webinar in June that goes more in depth about the reviewing process for both abstracts and grants, and we'll have some practice and examples for the attendees to interact with as we want to help you succeed in this volunteer role. So we're going to first talk about our agenda. So a couple things we're going to cover today. Obviously, we're going to do just a brief introduction of what an abstract is, what a grant is. The beauty of Sigma webinars and Sigma in general is we have a wide variety of nurses that we impact and that engage with us. So we could have the novice nurse, we could have student nurses, and then we could also have our experts that have been in the field for quite some time. So we want to make sure that we're leveling the playing field today and starting out with a basic understanding of what an abstract is and what a grant is, and then talk about the importance of that in the nursing profession. We're also going to talk about what Sigma requires for reviewers and what the commitments look like. And we will share the application details with you at the end of the webinar. So going right along into the content, what is an abstract? So some people might not know, the terminology can be confusing at times. An abstract is the summary of a piece of work an individual intends to present at a conference. The abstract really should be clear and concise so that anyone looking at it can understand what the submitter is trying to convey. So here at Sigma, we accept two types of abstracts or works or projects, depending on how you want to phrase it: completed work and incomplete work or ongoing work. Completed work would be an example of research that is completed and no edits will be done. So the beginning, if you did a lit review and then you did your project and you collected the data has all been analyzed and you came to the conclusion, did you meet the objectives of your project? The whole thing has been completed. And then incomplete works would be examples would be if you are still collecting data for your project or you're analyzing the data of the project, that would be considered an incomplete or ongoing work. Another example of ongoing work would be if you implemented a project on your clinical unit and you're continuing to collect data to see if whatever you implemented is improving patient outcomes or changing the metrics. So that would be considered an ongoing project. Based on which type of work that is being submitted, you would be dependent on your presentation type. And so at Sigma, in our international events, we have multiple types or styles of presentations that one can present. So overall, the goal of an abstract would be, whether it's completed or incomplete, would be to address a practice gap in the nursing profession. I'm going to kick it over to Riley to discuss grants.
Hi everyone. This is just a high overview of what grants are. To begin with, as the PowerPoint says, they're funds given to a person or organization for projects that are typically for the benefit of a specific group of people or general public. And what that means is that those specific groups of people, it could be a specific niche, or it's just something that's supposed to generally benefit the welfare of everyone. And then these funds typically are competitive, as if any of you have ever applied for a grant, you know that the process is long and lengthy. It starts off with you submitting a lengthy application and proposal about what your project is. And then it goes through a peer review process. And then once those applications are completed and reviewed, the persons, sometimes there are multiple awards, are given to the highest scores for Sigma. Now, if anybody's ever applied for an NIH grant, you know the lower the score, the better. We're kind of a little bit reverse in that aspect. And then just so people know, grants are typically not expected to be repaid. However, there are stipulations such as you have to present the research that you've done for that funding period at a conference, or you have to publish your findings. Sigma requires that all grant applications submit a final report. And since the funds are not repaid, they are generally given by donors. So it is expected that most grant recipients during the publication or presentation thank whoever was giving the funds. So that would be Sigma, so that way our donors are recognized for the efforts in giving those funds.
Perfect. Thank you for that overview of what a grant is, Riley. So we're going to move into the importance of grants and abstracts for the nursing profession. So when we look at the implications to the profession, we see that abstracts are submitted to disseminate research and evidence-based practice throughout the profession. One thing to be mindful of, you do not have to be a Sigma member to submit an abstract for one of our international conferences. We do get that question a lot. We welcome abstracts from all parts of the globe, and you do not have to be a Sigma member. Grants are to contribute to the advancement of nursing through research that is funded. And depending on which type of grant you are looking at would depend if you need to be a Sigma member. Some grants require you to be a member in good standing and some do not. So it is variable based on which grant you're looking at. Now, going into the reviewer role, you might be asking, so what is a reviewer and why should I do it? And let's break it down in the two different components. So an abstract reviewer is a volunteer who critiques and grades blinded abstract submissions for Sigma events. So if you submitted one or you're interested in looking at the research that others are submitting, you could apply to be an abstract reviewer. This role really is essential to ensure that Sigma has high quality work that is being disseminated at its international events. And a grant reviewer is a volunteer that critiques research grant proposals and or submissions. This role is essential to help those receiving funding to complete research to advance the nursing profession. So okay, we talked about what they do, but why should you do it? Both of these volunteer opportunities offer great ways for you to enhance your CV or your resume. It also helps the nursing profession in the grand scheme of things, and it helps you to learn all of the work that nurses are doing around the globe to advance the profession. A lot of times as nurses, we get kind of stuck or we get narrow-minded and only think about what we're doing in our places and spaces. So being a reviewer really opens up the door for you to see the vast array of content, information, research that's being done around the globe. It also helps you to connect with others and to network. So you could review something and think, wow, that's a really great idea. I've never thought of it before. And that can really open up doors for future practice, future improvements to the profession. So we're going to talk about Sigma reviewer requirements. So to be a reviewer at Sigma, there are certain requirements. So our standard requirements for abstracts, you must be an active Sigma member. And I want to talk about being an active Sigma member. You would need to be that for both abstracts and grant reviewers. A lot of people get confused. What does an active Sigma member mean? So let's say you were inducted about 5 years ago in your BSN program, but you never followed up after your induction. So you graduated, you went into practice, you were working bedside, trying to just, make it day to day. And your Sigma membership kind of fell by the wayside. Let's say you never, renewed and paid your annual dues. You would not be an active Sigma member at that point. You're still a member of Sigma, but you're not active or in good standing. So to be an active member in good standing, you do have to pay your dues annually. When you get those reminder notices that your membership is coming up due, that's what we're talking about. For abstract reviewers, you must hold at least a master's degree. And one thing that we do want to note is that your highest degree obtained does not need to be in nursing. So if you got a MBA, that's okay. A master's in business administration, you can still apply. Abstract reviewers do not have to have previous grant reviewing experience. That is not a requirement to be an abstract reviewer, but it is on the application. And then minimal experience is required. I think the beauty about being a reviewer for Sigma, for abstracts, is that we do want younger in the profession, novice people to want to expand and to learn and to grow. And that is what Sigma's here. We're here to help individuals that are nurses really expand and learn and grow in the profession in a variety of ways. And one way to do that would to become an abstract reviewer. Now, looking at grant
Linda,
reviewer, yeah, go ahead.
I just happened to see a question in the chat that relates to this, so I wanted to bring this
Mhm.
up real quick. For the abstract reviewer, what if you are a BSN to DNP student and you're not going to be awarded an MSN, however, you completed the MSN courses?
Oh, that's a very good question. Um, Technically, if we're looking at the guidelines, this individual would not meet the qualifications until they completed their DMP program. So that's a great question, but since you would not have a master's level degree, you could apply, but you would not be accepted as a reviewer at that point. Thank you for that question, Megan.
You're welcome.
Grant reviewers do need to hold a terminal degree. And what we mean by a terminal degree would be a PhD, a DNP, DNS, all of those doctoral level degrees would need to be held for anyone interested in being a grant reviewer. Previous grant reviewing experience is required, and then also moderate other experience is required, such as submitting abstracts, reviewing abstracts, manuscript submissions, manuscript reviews, etc. Riley, do you have anything to add on to this?
Yeah, I would just say, yeah, because with the moderate experience, it's so that you understand, so that we know you understand exactly what goes into the process of a grant. It is very lengthy. Ours are, 16 pages long, so you have to read all of that, plus all of the appendices that come with them. So that moderate experience, while some may not have that, it really is to make sure that you understand uh, how a grant is, how it works, and are capable of reviewing something at that sort of level.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for adding that on. That really does help. So we're going to move into a little bit of the global approach for Sigma, and I'm going to let Riley take this one.
Thank you, Linda. As most of you know, Sigma is an international community of nurses dedicated to the advancement of knowledge, teaching, learning, and services through the cultivation of communities of practice, education, and research. Sigma aims to develop nurse leaders anywhere to improve healthcare everywhere. Therefore, all of our abstracts and grant submissions are submitted from all countries around the globe. Ooh, couldn't talk there for a second. We are actually committed to worldwide collaboration. So what that means is, as a reviewer for Sigma, you must be mindful of the global submissions, such as, not every country has the same opportunities. So someone who lives in the United States or in Canada has vastly different opportunities to be published than someone in a smaller country with limited resources. And also, in reviewing, English may not be a primary language. So taking into consideration that if somebody is using their if somebody is from Asia and is using an Asian keyboard and there's a translation software. So understanding that translating from Chinese to English, there may be some grammatical errors that are not caught, but just being mindful of that when you're reviewing applications so that we're making sure that everybody is on equal footing when reviewing these applications.
Perfect, thank you. So the reviewer commitment, there is, some expectations when you agree to be a reviewer with Sigma, whether it's a grant or abstract reviewer. So for abstracts, we do have 2 to 3 events per year, with our expectation that reviewers will review for at least 1 event per year. And then for grants, review assigned proposals by the assigned deadline and provide applicant with quality, constructive, usable feedback. So those really are the basics of the expectations. When we talk about the number of reviewers for both abstracts and grants, it truly is dependent on the number of reviewers we have. So more people make lighter work, right? So if we had more reviewers, you're not going to be assigned as many things to review. So ideally for abstracts, a reviewer would be assigned less than 20 abstracts to review, but it could be up to 25 per event. And you might receive an email from me saying, hey, I'm really in a pinch here. Could you review a few more? For grants, ideally each reviewer would be assigned 5 to 6 proposals, but it could be as many as 15. And like I said, it really is dependent on the number of reviewer volunteers we have for each one. I do want to spend a little bit of time, and Riley, please jump in here if you have anything in addition to share. I want to talk about best practices for reviewing. So as Riley had mentioned on the last slide, we do ask that you be mindful of the global submissions. So as we've mentioned, Sigma is committed to worldwide collaboration, and we do ask for submitters to include global implications of their work. And that also means that we're going to get global submissions. So we could have submissions from a variety of countries, and we ask that you be aware and mindful of that. We do ask that reviewers read the submissions in their entirety, and sometimes you might need to read it more than once. Ideally, all the submissions would be clear and concise, but it might take you reading it more than once to thoroughly understand what the submitter was trying to convey and for you to grasp all of the components of the submission. We do ask that you follow the guidelines and allow for adequate time for you to complete your reviews. So we know that everyone is busy and that we're pulled in multiple different ways for a variety of activities that we're involved in, both professionally and personally. But allowing adequate time to complete the reviews is really essential. We provide tools or information for our reviews. For instance, for abstracts, we provide a grading rubric for all reviewers to use. We know that you're busy, but if you follow the rubric and you read the content, completing the review should not be that burdensome. We don't want this to be something that causes additional stress, as we know you are a volunteer, but we do want you to follow the guidelines. And then provide constructive feedback. This is one of the most important components of best practice for reviewing. So we would ask that you abstain from bias and provide specific, constructive, and objective feedback. So when you're reviewing, let's say, an abstract, you would provide a specific example of why you graded it a certain way instead of overarching, because ultimately the goal of feedback should be to help improve the submission and help the submitter. It really does aid in their intellectual growth and is really essential to and is a means of continuous improvement for them as an individual and for them in the profession. So, for instance, let's say you're having a really bad day. Things didn't go right. You tried to get the kids off to school in time and it just didn't happen. You didn't get time to eat. You have multiple things to do in the evening. That day would not be a great day to sit down and review an abstract or a grant, right? Because what you've experienced throughout the day is going to cloud your perception, whether you want to admit it or not. And so we would ask that you are mindful of when you are reviewing so that you're providing the best feedback possible to our individuals. Riley, do you have anything to share in addition to that?
Just sort of feeding off of what you said when reviewing a grant application, our applicants are really hungry and looking for that feedback that they can take to improve the application. So if it's something that you don't think is fundable at the moment, but there are nuggets of things in there that are great and you see things that need to be improved, making sure that you give that to the applicant because they are very hungry for that. And also just being mindful, at least for grants, when the way we do our grants is that there are multiples in there. So budgetary wise, they range anywhere from 2,500 to 10,000. So just being aware that if they've applied for multiple grants within it and the budget doesn't necessarily align with the one you're reviewing, that if you think it's still fundable at that amount, so say somebody is really hoping to get the 10,000, but you're reviewing for a 2,500 one, but you think that this is still doable, and is a great opportunity for them to, for this research to be funded, you can make that note. When we go through and do our next webinar, I'll be able to show you a little bit. There are a couple of slots where you'll add your comments. One will be seen only by me. The other one is seen by the PI. And in that section that's only seen by me, you can say, hey, I think this is doable, but obviously the budget needs to be readjusted. And we take that back to the applicant going, your proposal's great, but not at that amount. So you need to rework your budget and we will work with them to get that in line. So just being mindful of the different applications that are going on at the same time, because we do lump all of our applications in brackets.
Yeah, thank you for that additional information, Riley. I think it's important, like you said, to be mindful of the bigger picture, right? So is this meeting the goals of what the grant is for or what the event is for the abstracts? And one thing that you mentioned for grants is the two-part component of constructive feedback for the submitter and then feedback for you as the Sigma staff member. I want to share a little bit with this group on the call today that we are transitioning for abstracts to a different system, and that system will allow that part component as well. So you could have feedback, constructive feedback for the abstract submitter, and then feedback for the nurse planners on staff at Sigma, like, hey, they submitted for oral podium presentation, but it doesn't quite seem like their work is complete. Maybe you should consider a poster. And then constructive feedback for the submitter would be, it does not appear that there is complete data with your submission. Consider more development in your data and evaluation. That would be an example. And like Riley said, we'll go into the details and the nitty gritty, if you will, of how to actually review in our June webinar that goes more in depth about reviewing. So we're going to implement what we call a call to action. So looks like right now we have 169 people on the webinar. And this is also for all of those that are viewing the webinar after the live webinar. We do want to encourage you to apply. So on the screen, we do have the QR code here for you. So we encourage you to apply to be a reviewer. The application is the same for both grants and abstracts, and you can select what your interest is. And so we ask that you scan the QR code, or Megan will put, yep, perfect, Megan, put the link in the chat. So if you don't have the ability to scan the QR code, that is okay. You can just use the link that is in the chat to apply. And then I would say you could also, if you have questions, you can email reviewer at sigmanursing.org, and we can help answer any questions that you might have after the fact. But we are going to open it up for questions. So Megan, do we have any questions?
We do have a few questions, and for those who have some questions that they haven't typed in yet, if you go ahead and put that in the Q&A feature, we can get those addressed now. So first up, someone had a question about if they were selected, if they were selected to present granted work at a conference, are they required to pay for fees associated with that?
Riley?
So yes, some of our grants do offer travel allowances, but typically with those, it is on you or your organization to fund you to get there to accept the award or present. It is just with the expectation that I lost my train of thought. But yes, yeah. The short answer is yes. You are expected to do that. But like I said, some of our grants do allow, when it's required to attend to receive the award in person, we do sometimes give that travel allowance. It's a reimbursement allowance. But we also do, if you are presenting at one of Sigma's conferences, we do have the leadership education grants, which are basically our travel grants. They are, again, they're reimbursable, so you would have to pay for all of the stuff, all of the fees up front. But then once you are at the conference, you would attend what we call our foundation tea. You get to meet some of the donors who were gracious enough to give money to help fund your research. You get to meet them. They really love that. And then that's where you would receive that travel grant if you were awarded one. It is also, again, it is a competitive in nature. So we receive over 100 applicants and we can only accept so many.
Yeah, and Riley, are those leadership education grants open all of the time or just in association with the events?
They're associated with specific events. So currently we are only offering them for our convention and Congress. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sigma typically has 3 events, like 2 to 3 events a year, like we discussed. So one event would be creating healthy work environments, which is not currently being offered for leadership education grants. That is typically in the spring of February, March. We have our International Nursing Research Congress, which occurs in July of every year, and then convention, which is in November of every other year. Megan, do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do. So if we're looking to attract younger or novice nurses to get involved. Why would a master's degree or doctoral degree be required in order to be a reviewer?
Yeah, that's a excellent question, and thank you for whoever submitted that. So at the Bachelor's of Nursing degree level or an equivalent nursing degree, you have research-based courses, but not to the extent in which you need to be able to critically analyze and review the abstracts or grants. So that is why we do require the advanced degrees to be a reviewer. It is not saying that you do not have knowledge or expertise in that, but we do need you to have at least a master's degree for abstracts.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And if someone is interested in being a grant reviewer and, does not have any grant reviewing experience, how do we have any recommendations on how someone could get experience? Riley?
Yeah, I would say the easiest way would be to start with our abstracts. So learning how the process works and understanding how reviewing works. And if it's not with Sigma, looking at other nonprofit organizations, nursing organizations that do reviews for abstracts. So like I believe the ANCC has their magnet conferences, and just looking into doing that. And then as you grow and get more experience in reviewing and understanding how the process works, you will develop that experience. So it's not necessarily saying you have to have grant experience to review, to be a grant reviewer, but you have to have experience in reviewing at least a few years of abstracts at least, so you understand how the process works, what you're looking for in terms of, like Linda said, completed and incompleted work. Does this work seem like, so when you go move into the grant world, is this work that's something that's going to be long continued after the proposal that they're submitting, or is this going to be a completed work? This is a one and done application. So that's how you gain that experience.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, and to coattail off of that, sorry, Megan, to interrupt. I want to talk a little bit about what happens to your application after you apply to be a reviewer. So we do have criteria that we go through, and if you meet all of the criteria right away, you get accepted. However, if you're in that gray space, so let's say you've been a lecturer or a professor for 20 years, you've written a few articles, but you've never reviewed abstracts, that application would then go on to our committee that is reviewed. And Riley, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the committee, the RSAC, but what does it stand for? I can't quite remember off the top of my head. Do you?
It is, let me see if I can remember it off the top of my head. It is the
Research
RSAC.
and
It's a
Scholarship.
Research and Scholarship Advisory Committee. There we
Thank you.
go. Let's try to remember what the A was.
Yeah, the Research and Scholarship Advisory Committee then reviews your application, 3 of them blind or independently, and then they provide a recommendation. So it is not just one individual deciding if you get to be a reviewer or not. We have built-in processes to make sure that we are being fair, that we're offering people opportunities. A lot of work goes into each application. Megan, other questions?
Yes, so we have a few questions on timing. So, first question is if you were to want to apply to be a reviewer, do you have a certain close date for the reviewer application that you have to apply by? Or is it just always open?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. Thank you for whoever submitted that. So I would say previously, many years ago at Sigma, we only accepted applications during the application window time. So there was a few months that we would have applications for reviewers open, and that would be the only time that you could apply. Within the last 2 years, we have revamped our whole reviewer application process so that it can be open and I would say available to more individuals. So it is an open application time. There is no set application period. There is no deadline for you to apply. So you could use that link or the QR code at any point and you could apply. So it is, like I said, an open application. You do not need to complete the application by any set date or time.
All right. And let's say someone is selected and they volunteered to submit for reviewing abstracts. Is there a certain time period they have to review those abstracts that have been assigned to them?
Yes, that is a great question. So typically when we assign the abstracts, you're given about 2 weeks to complete your abstracts. Now that is all dependent on the timeline of the event. And then also if we have late breaking abstracts, but you can rest on the fact that you would have 2 to 3 weeks to complete your abstract reviews.
All right. And then if someone does sign up to be a reviewer, what does that time commitment look like over the span of a year? For example, since Sigma has multiple events, how would that look like? Or would they have to be obligated to review for every event that we have?
Yeah, so thank you for that question as well. For abstracts, and then I'll let Riley answer the amount of time for grants. For abstracts, you are required to review for one event per year. So if we want to quantify that, like how much time would it take? So let's say it took you 15 minutes for each abstract review. So if you think about that, 15 minutes, oh, and then depending on how comfortable you are, it could be a little faster. So you're really not taking that much time in the year to complete your abstract reviews. So I would say time commitment wise, you don't have to think, oh my goodness, I need to give them 30 or 40 hours to do these reviews. That's not a realistic thought process. More like, okay, I can do it in little chunks. And you're not required to do all of your reviews in one sitting for abstracts. So let's say that you were assigned 15 different abstracts and you have little pockets of time. You could do 5 here, 5 there, and then 5 right before the deadline. So you could get them all completed. Riley, do you have anything to add from the grant side?
Yeah, so similar to what Linda said, but we allow for 6 weeks because the grants are a little bit more involved. Like I said, they are 16-page proposals with a lot of appendices. So I would recommend not reviewing, especially if we have less and you're reviewing more than the 5 or 6 that we ideally would recommend not reviewing all of them at once, because that, I don't know about you, but that would hurt my brain. So we allow 6 weeks for the application, for the reviewers to review the applications, just because of the nature of the length. And then what was the other part of that? I thought so was the
Like,
second part of that.
how many times per year maybe they would have to commit to, or what time span?
Gotcha. We don't have like, unlike abstracts, we don't have a specific requirement. I will look through a list of our reviewers, and to try to make sure that I don't overtax our reviewers. I look at who is reviewed within the last year or two, and then we'll create a list for the applications that I need reviewed, and we'll send it out to a large group and ask for them to volunteer. And that allows you to know if you have the bandwidth at that time to review those grant applications. So there is no harm in saying no, I have a full class load. I have, I'm also doing, hours at the hospital, etc. So I just don't have the bandwidth to do that. But you may be contacted multiple times in the year if, to see if there's you have space freed up. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. And while you were talking, Riley, I was taking a peek at the chat and I see that somebody asked, do they get to pick their abstract assignments or do we pick them for them? So on the abstract reviewing side of things, when you complete your application, you say, I'm interested in clinical practice and leadership, or you could say you're interested in all the categories, but we try our best to assign you abstracts that are based on your interests. Do you do that as well, Riley, for grants?
Yes, so similar. The only difference would be for the small grants. When we do that one, because that is such a wide variety of topics, I will typically look through all of those grants, select the common themes out of those grants, and then look for reviewers that meet those common themes. So, and then you're assigned at random. So some of them may be in your field of interest and some of them may be a little bit off. It just is dependent, in the small grants. But with all the other ones, they have specific niches. So yes, I'm looking at what you have selected in your review when you applied, that panel, to see what best fits you.
And I anticipate after this webinar, we will see an influx of applications, which is wonderful. So I do ask that you give us a little bit of time to work through those. So if you're hoping for an immediate response, I'm going to have to say, unfortunately, you're probably not going to receive that, but we will definitely be mindful of all the applications that we receive as a result of this webinar. And we are so thankful that we have so many eager people that want to volunteer with us. This is amazing. We have about 5 or 10 more minutes, Megan. What other questions do we have?
So a couple questions related to if someone has either submitted an abstract or submitted for a grant, can they still be a reviewer, and how would that work?
Yes, absolutely. So let's say that you are really interested in improving the work life of ICU nurses. So you submit an abstract for our Creating Healthy Work Environments event. You can still be a reviewer. Our systems are sophisticated enough that it checks for conflicts. So you do not have to worry about can I submit can I be a reviewer if I've already submitted? The answer is yes. We also ask that if we assign you an abstract and you feel that there is a conflict, even though it's not clear, you can just email us and say, hey, I'm not comfortable reviewing this abstract. Can you assign it to someone else? That is perfectly acceptable as well. But we will not assign you any abstracts for events that your name is on, either as the primary presenter, secondary presenter, or author. So there is a conflict process in place. And Riley, I assume that for grants, it's very similar.
Yes, yeah, for grants, it is very similar. We have had reviewers who have gone on to receive grants from us. So yes, it's very similar in the situation of if you are applying for a grant within a certain cycle, but you are a reviewer, you would not be reviewing any applicants within that cycle or would be asked to. And same goes with the conflict of interest. Ours are not fully blind, so you are able to see the primary PI and I believe the secondary if there is one. So if you are familiar with them or if you work at the same hospital, it is okay to say, hey, I have a conflict of interest. I don't feel comfortable enough reviewing this because I know this person on a, on a on a level that I would feel uncomfortable doing this as such. And that is totally fine because obviously we do not know all of the people you know. So, help us to help you. If you do have a conflict, we're more than happy to remove that and assign you a different person to review.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for explaining that, Riley. And I just want to make sure that we're clear. Today, we're just talking about abstracts for events and grants. We're not talking about abstracts for manuscripts, for journals, anything like that. Megan, any other questions?
So perhaps some clarification might be helpful for those that are wondering if they're a reviewer for, an event. In any way, would they have to attend that event,
Oh,
or
sure.
is it just?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a great question as well. As a reviewer, you are not required to attend the event in which you review for. So let's say that you decide to apply to be a reviewer and you get accepted and you review for INRC, International Nursing Research Congress 2025. You are not required to attend that event. However, if you did decide to attend that event, that cost would be out of your own pocket. We do not cover the cost for you in that regard. When it comes to volunteering, we do not provide any financial compensation for volunteering. That also includes we do not provide any financial for any events. So another example would be at our in-person events, we have volunteer moderators. They do not get paid to do that, nor do they get any discount or free admission to the event as it is a volunteer opportunity. Does that answer that question, Megan?
I believe so, but if the person that asked it needs clarification, feel free to type that in the Q&A feature for me. Let's see what else. Someone was curious if you guys know if, since Sigma requires a master's degree, is there any other places, I guess, that you know of that maybe wouldn't require it or some other way that they could review in any way?
Okay, that's a great question as well. I would say whoever this is, they are welcome to apply and we can review the information that they provide. We cannot guarantee that they would become an abstract reviewer with Sigma, but please feel free to apply. One of the great things about just applying is that you also get the experience of completing a professional application for these sorts of advancements to your degree, right? So we would recommend that even if you don't get accepted, that's okay, but to take what we have to say and really use it as a tool to improve. Maybe you didn't articulate your previous experience the way that you should have, or you could have really done worded it in a different way so that we understand the vast work that you have been doing. So there's a lot of additional things that you can get from just applying as well.
Awesome. Linda, could you go back to the QR page again so someone could scan
Yeah, of
that?
course. No problem. There you go.
Thank you. And then for those that still have questions, you can definitely email reviewer@sigmanursing.org. I'll put that email in the chat again in case we didn't by chance get to your question directly here on the call. And trying to see if there was anything else. I think that looks like it's about it for the day.
Perfect. And we did just want to share a couple references that we used. So if you are interested in learning more, you can use these references. And we want to thank everyone so much for attending with us today. And we're going to hand it over to Megan. Riley, do you have any great parting words for these participants?
No, I just saw it just kind of popped up that someone was asking about where we get our money from for the grants.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And just gonna answer that real quick. It comes from our foundation, and our foundation works tirelessly and effortlessly to obtain donations from not only our members, but from a variety of different outside sources as well. So they do come from individuals. We don't have many organizations that donate to us. I don't know if we have any. I don't know off the top of my head, but it is a lot of small donations. So thank you all for joining us today.
All right. So thank you so much to our presenters for all of this great information. We are grateful that you took the time to share with this audience, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. And we hope that everyone attending enjoyed this webinar today. We have updated our process for our NCPD contact hour obtaining your certificate, and you can actually obtain that right after the webinar concludes. So you can access our learning management system to complete the evaluation and obtain your certificate now. So you'll see on the screen, there's a link there, but I'm also going to put it here in the chat. You can click that link and that will take you directly to the evaluation so you can obtain your NCPD. If by chance you missed that, you can, it will be also sent in the email that you'll receive 1 week after the webinar concludes. So thank you all for attending. We appreciate you. We appreciate if you complete our application to become a reviewer. And thank you and have a great day.